Hi, this is Dr. Michael Whitman, and you're listening to The Shrink in Beverly Hills. This is part two with Arthur Kovacs. Dr. Kovacs is a licensed psychologist for many decades. He's accomplished an enormous amount in the field, and I wanted to have him on the show for part two. Arthur, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine and looking forward to our conversation.
So am I. And I hope I don't say this too much, but I am impressed that Arthur is 94 years old and sharp as can be and very inspirational. So I wanted to put that out there. And today I thought we could talk about some of the violence that just happened last weekend all over the world, Australia and in Los Angeles and at Boston University. I think it was no, not Boston University. Which one was the Ivy League school it happened at? Brown?
Pardon me? Bruce Brown University,
Shooting at
yes.
Brown. And so I thought maybe we could talk about the psychological parts of the shooting and how that affects not only the people near and dear to it, but just living in a society where we take this in so much. You have any thoughts on these things?
Uh, the how can I put this? I think we're living through times where there's a great deal of stress on everybody, and I will speculate about what is creating that stress. But human beings do not do well when there's rapid change and a lot of confusion and uncertainty, and it feels like the ground is moving all the time. And they tend to be temper ridden and short on being able to contain themselves. And we're in a really very difficult time. Uh, I feel quite annoyed about all of it because I was born in a very similar era in this nation. It was full of anger, hatred, difficulties. I was born at the very depth of the Depression. Many people were starving in the country, and it was a terrible time then. And the same kinds of things were happening. There was huge rage. People had to rage at somebody about something, and there was little toleration for differences. And here I am moving towards finishing up my life, and I don't know if I'm going to see the end of this terrible time that we're living through. It's also increased the terrible time by the media and by the existence of the internet.
So, Arthur, what year were you born and what city were you born in?
I was born in 1931 in one of the suburbs of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
I see. I see. And yeah. So the Great Depression, I think that's
Started in 29. Didn't really start lifting till 38.
yeah. So that was the stock market crash. So, like I said in the first part, you're of a similar era to my father, who was born in 1925 and went through that, and he grew up in New York City. And now you're we're saying that history repeats itself, and this country is again more full of hate and vitriol than you've seen since then.
Yes.
That's sad, isn't it?
Oh, well, in those terrible times of the 1930s, the country was very divided. The Spanish Civil War had started with Hitler playing on one side, testing out his weaponry and getting ready for World War II, and the Russians on the other side of that war. And the Japanese invaded China, and we were seeing newsreels of atrocities and horrible scenes. And the country was so divided. I think about a third of the country thought we should stay away and not get involved in any wars. And then there was a third who thought that this was a fight for between fascism and totalitarianism and the democracies, and we were going to have to get into it finally, or the world was really going to turn terribly reactive and horrible. And then there was the group who thought we should align ourselves with Hitler. The American Bund was very active. The stormtroopers were marching on the streets of all the large cities in this country with Sieg Heil, and we should align ourselves with Hitler. Hitler has the right idea, and he's a strong leader, and he's lifting his country out of the depression. He's got the factories working again, and the way to improve the culture is to align with Hitler and give him aid if a war in Europe starts. And it was terrible. At that
And
time,
especially you were a little boy and you were Jewish.
yeah,
So
that's
what was
right.
that like for you?
That's what I'm about to get into.
Okay.
Uh, I had an unfortunate tragedy in my own life. I went to the elementary school that was a block and a half from where I lived, and the neighborhood was an upper middle class Jewish neighborhood. So most of the kids that I went to in the elementary school, the public elementary school, were Jewish. But just before I got to my house, on the same side of the street, there was a very large Catholic church, and there was a parochial school in the church. And the parochial school used to let out about the same time that the public school let out. I'd be trying to walk home, and I'd get surrounded by a knot of Christian, of Catholic boys yelling at me, "You're a kike and a Christ killer," and they would beat the shit out of me. And I couldn't protect myself. One winter was so terrible. They tied me up with ropes and threw me into the forest behind our houses and left me there to die. And I was so ashamed I couldn't protect myself and frightened all the time. And I didn't even tell my parents what had happened. Sometimes I'd come home bruised and say that I fell off some play equipment at work or something. I would have some lie about why I look like crap, but I was
Why didn't you tell them, do you think? Shame?
I was ashamed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should be able to take care of myself.
When kids get bullied, yeah, they often don't say anything because of shame. Yeah.
And I was unfortunately the third child in my family, and by then my parents were not putting very much effort into parenting me at all. I was expected to grow myself up somehow, so I was not going to tell them the terrible stories of my life.
But your siblings, did you have a brother who could be more helpful or protective?
No, no, I had, oh, that's a wonderful story. I'll tell it. I had two older sisters. Was 12 years older than me, and the other was 7 years older than me. There's a big gap between me and my middle sister. Uh, I am what I've come to call a restitution child. And you may ask, what is the restitution? The problem is my father was an entrepreneur and a fairly successful one. And from the time I was about 4 years old, he was already starting to train me to take over his business when I grew up. Now, before I was born, he was very unhappy with my mother because there had been two girls and there was no son. And he leaned on her and demanded that she try again and have another child. And she told him she'd had a bad cesarean section with the middle one. She had a huge scar on her. The surgery had been awful. She'd had infections after the surgery. She didn't want to even risk going through anything like that. And they squabbled and squabbled and squabbled. I learned this from my older sisters much later in life. And eventually my father prevailed and my father surrendered and they started to have unprotected sex again. And sure enough, she got pregnant. And as soon as she got pregnant, that would have been about 4 years after my middle sister had been born. As soon as she got pregnant, she went into a terrible postpartum, not postpartum, but post-pregnancy depression. She felt like she hadn't defended herself properly. This was a mistake. That child should not be born. She's going to be miserable. She doesn't want a third child. And without telling my father, she went over the border into West Virginia, which was close by, and she had, well, they were all illegal. She had an illegal abortion. And
Wow.
she came home and told my father that she had had a miscarriage. And he was very comforting for a while. He said, "Well, I'm so very sorry that's happened, but we'll wait a week or two or three, and then we have to try again because I have to have another child." And she started fighting with him again, but she felt terribly, enormously guilty because she had been responsible for murdering a life that was coming. And she called our family physician and asked if he knew an alienist he could see. That's what psychiatrists were called in the 1930s. They were called alienists for some reason. And she went to see one, and he was a man of great, important moral persuasion. And he said, "You're miserable now. I can tell how unhappy you are. And you are because you've taken a life. And you have to make restitution. You have to start. You lied to your husband and you took a life, and both of those things are going to eat you up for the rest of your life. The only way is you're going to have to reverse everything. You're going to have that child if you can, and you have to atone for the terrible things you did by engaging in those activities." So she listened to him, and it took a while, but I got born. And my father was happy because he had a son, but my mother went into a horrible postpartum depression. She was in bed for almost 3 years, getting up very rarely, and she had the blinds closed. She had horrible eczema. She was crying frequently. I remember going into her bedroom once when I was about three, and I somehow felt like it was my responsibility to see if I could make her happier. And I went in with some toy and I said, "Mom, look what I found in the basket in my room. Can we play with this for a while?" And she screamed at me, "Get out of here. You see my eczema? You see my cold cloth in my head? I have a migraine headache and I feel terrible." And she yelled at me, "And it's all your fault," she said to me. And boy, that really has set me on my life's path. I spent my life trying to prove over and over again it was not a bad thing that I got born, that I
Mm.
could bring some value to the world. Nothing I've done has been sufficient. I can't stop, and I'm driven always to try and do more good in the world. I'm proud of the things I've accomplished, but it's not been without this internal feeling of restlessness that maybe I shouldn't have been born, and an uncertainty about what guilt I'm carrying about what.
Well, I'm so thankful that you were born, and I think many people are that you've helped and touched, Arthur.
And I know that up here, but I don't always know that in my
Right.
soul somewhere.
Yeah, I can see it. Well, the first message you got when you were a little boy from her gets embedded, and that's tough to fully remove, isn't it?
Now we're tying this to my beatings I was getting.
Oh,
Uh,
geez.
what?
I said, oh, geez, you had quite a rough childhood.
Yeah, I did. Uh, My father's only interest in me was he took me on Sundays. He was doing paperwork office at the business. He'd take me on Sundays and show me the machines and how they worked. And he let me sort checks for him so he could put them back in the checkbook. And he had little tasks for me to do already. And he kept saying to me, "Someday all this is going to be yours." And I didn't like it all that. Someday all this is going to be mine. Didn't feel like it was what I wanted to do with my life. And as I got older and moving towards adolescence, I got more and more frightened because I was getting ready. I knew I would tell him that I was never going to go to work in his business. I had no interest in doing that. And then I had watched him slap my sisters' faces and scream at them about this, that, and the other thing. I was afraid I would be in a physical fight of some kind with my father over and over again if I told him I wasn't going to go work in his business. I knew already one of the things that he would threaten me with, that he wasn't going to pay for a college education for me if I wasn't going to work in his business. And I was very scared. And fate took care of that problem. He died when I was 12, and I was
Oh,
liberated. I had a secret joy that he had died, even at the same time that I was terribly upset
wow.
because the fight with him was not going to be. I was free to become and do whatever I decided I was going to come and do.
How old was he when he died?
48.
Wow, of a heart attack, or how did he
Heart
have?
attack. On his side of the family, his mother had died when she was 38. His oldest brother had died at 51, and he died at 48, all of coronaries.
Where were his parents born?
My mother was born in Romania, and my father was born in Hungary.
Oh, wow. That you have the same background as me.
Uh,
We're Romanian, Hungary, Polish, Ukrainian.
Back to what's wrong.
Okay.
What's wrong in the culture is that we are living through a time of change too rapidly. We were not built for change for 100,000 years. We were hunters and gatherers, and we moved in small clans across the landscape, harvesting things and killing some predators occasionally for meals. And we lived outside, and that was life. And things began to change with the invention of agriculture. We no longer were nomadic. We stayed in one place. By the way, our diets changed for the worse when we increased agriculture, and life expectancy went down. People lived, the people who were in the first $100,000 years of life tended to live about 65 or 70 years. It went down to 40 years when we started with agriculture because we didn't have properly rounded diets. We're eating mainly the things we raised, and off season we would eat some other things, but we didn't have a good diet anymore. We were doing better when we hunted and gathered.
Have you been pretty careful about your diet for some time, or?
Yeah, I am. No matter my wife wants to be the nurturer, no matter how old we get, and she's 89. She has always wanted that we would have family meals together that she would prepare. And even though the kids are grown up and gone, she still makes the two of us 2 meals a day. We have sit down breakfast together, and we sit down for the evening meal together. Now, once in a while, we'll go to a restaurant, or once in
Uh,
a while, we'll have some Chinese food set in. But most of the meals we eat are freshly prepared and wholesome things that she fixes for us.
wow, that's great. So she
Mhm.
sounds like she's doing well too.
Yeah, she's doing well too.
Yeah, that's great.
We constantly have an argument going with each other. Who is going to be the most tormented and overwhelmed when the other one dies? And
Hmm.
I keep saying, even though I'm 5 years older than you, this is going to tear you apart. I can tell from how you look sometimes when I may be getting sick with something. And the actuaries would probably say, since I'm 5 years older than a male, I'm probably going to die before you, but I'm making you a promise. I will stay alive at least until you die because I'm going to be miserable and torn into pieces if you die, but I think I can take it better than you do. So we get into fights about who can stand the death of the other one better.
Wow, amazing.
All right, back to the culture. I keep leaving it for personal
Well,
story.
we're also sort of taking some history of your current and lifespan. So I think it's kind of a fun way to look at your life as well as the challenges of today in society. So we can keep bopping around. So um, yeah, I mean, there's so much violence right now in our society. Every moment I hear about a new shooting, and you're saying some of the factors, and one of them is that we have so much change so suddenly in our society.
Everybody's angry because we have no idea what's happening to us or where we're going. What our job, how many jobs are going to be eliminated by artificial intelligence? Uh, War has broken out again in Central Europe, and is this the beginning of return to endless battles? Are we, oh, are we going to destroy the planet, become extinct? That's quite a real possibility, and if it happens, it'll probably happen before this decade is over. And
And scapegoating Jews is happening in
oh,
anti-Semitism.
yes, I remember crying out when I was a kid, why the hell do we have to be the chosen people? What have we been chosen to? We've been chosen to be hated by everybody and to be exterminated whenever possible.
Yeah.
What a thing to be chosen for.
Well, that term can get Jewish people in trouble, but it's that what I learned is it actually means we're chosen to carry the principles of the Torah. We're not chosen
I
in any way
know.
that we're superior. It's that we're chosen to carry out certain principles as best we can. So,
Mhm.
but it gets twisted that they against Jews that they think they're better. Yeah.
Mm. Well, everybody thinks they're better. We're split
Right.
up into a bunch of clans, each one of whom thinks it knows what the correct values are to have and what the correct ways to live are and what are honorable lives. And
Right.
there's so fucking many infidels all around everywhere who are pursuing other ugly ways of being in the world, and they deserve to die.
Right. Well, you saw that in World War II, where each country thought they should be the empire that dominates the world, from Japan to Germany to Italy and Russia, and every you're right, every society or tribe has this sort of sense that they're the superior one.
We are like children. We want it our way, and we'll throw a temper tantrum and even kill people if it isn't our way. I
Yeah,
think our emotional age as a species is about 3 years old.
yeah, yeah. And so, are any of your current patients, which I think it's great, you're still seeing patients. And last time you talked about it's important not to retire if at all
Oh,
possible.
yes,
Are any of your current patients, do they talk about current events or more just what's going on in their own life or both?
both,
Yeah.
both. There is a book I would recommend to everybody. It's the best thing I've seen about what's happening to our culture. It's called Stolen Focus, Focus. And it's about the rise of the digital era. The man, I forgot the man's name who wrote it, but Amazon has it in paperback for about 11 bucks. Stolen Focus. The man who wrote it is a British investigative reporter, and he got an assignment at the New York Times. So he came to the United States for a period of time. And while he was here, it was too expensive living in the center of Manhattan where the Times building is. So he lived out in one of the suburbs and took the train to work every day. And he was certain that he would make it was about an hour's ride on the train to get into Grand Central Station. So he would bring his little laptop with him so he could do work while he was riding in the morning on the train. And he starts the book by saying he got to know many of the people. They were out on the platform for the same time train 5 days a week, and sometimes he would sit next to the same person. And there was seemed to be an elderly man who sat next to him frequently on the train, and the guy would sit in the window seat. And he'd look out the window and he'd look at the farms going by and at the orchards and some of the little towns that they went by on the way. And he was just looking and looking. Once in a while, he'd take a little nap. And the guy who writes the book said he was feeling so arrogantly superior. The idiot is wasting time. He's doing nothing worthwhile. He's just sitting there looking out the window at what's going by outside. I have my work and how wonderful it is. And then as he did his work and his connection to the computer, he started thinking about how often he's on the phone, how often he's on his computer. And it turned out he was on the device for about 12 hours a day, one or the other of those devices. A good more than three-fifths, four-fifths of his waking hours were spent interacting with the screen in some way. And he became alarmed. He began to feel like he had an addiction of some kind. And he challenged himself. What would happen if I quit? What would happen if I stopped using electronic devices? And he decided he would make it happen. And he would have to do it very, very hugely or it wouldn't work. So he decided he was going to go take a vacation in Cape Cod. He had been there to Cape Cod a few times. He thought it was a very peaceful place, and he wanted some place where he'd be peaceful if he was going to give up his addictions. And he left his laptop and the phone at home, and he went away. He was going to grit his teeth and do it for a month. And he writes that that was one of the most horrible things he ever tried to do in his life. He was restless. He was having headaches. He would try and walk into the local store and look at newspapers about what was going on in the world. And that didn't satisfy him. He wanted to know what emails he was getting while he was gone and what was happening. And
Withdrawal symptoms, right?
yeah, and yeah, for many years, for many addiction. He decided that he was going to limit himself to 4 hours a day when he got back. And he did, and he decided that what he was going through was probably not just unique to him. There are probably other people who are being affected by the digital world. And what was happening. And he was going to interview individuals. He was going to interview people who hired a lot of people and put them to work. He was going to interview whenever he could the CEOs of FaceTime, other kinds of companies that specialized in running the digital world. And he was going to familiarize himself with what they were trying to do and how they were trying to accomplish their goals. And his,
Okay. So, but before you continue, I also wanted to mention Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation. I thought that was really well done about how Instagram and the social media has really made our kids more anxious and
yeah,
how to slow that down.
yeah.
But so, Stolen Focus and The Anxious Generation are books we could recommend. But I want to come back to you, Arthur. Um, and I know we're popping around a lot, but how do you stay connected in the world? And also, how have you turned out so well given what a traumatic childhood you've described?
I'm a survivor. That's another good story.
Yeah,
Well, I got straight A's everywhere and everything while I was going through the school system. I was very smart.
yeah.
My father did one thing that I think saved my emotional life. He saw how incapacitated my mother was, and there was a household to run that had people in it, three kids, herself, him, and he decided he would hire a live-in help to come live with us because my mother, who knows when my mother would get her game back again. And he hired a mill worker's daughter who was 17 years old, and she came to live with us. She was with us 6 days a week from the time she got up in the morning until she went to sleep at night. And Sunday she had off to go back to be with her family. She was Polish. And while everybody else was ignoring me, or my middle sister was actually trying to torture me as much as she could and get away with it because my parents weren't paying very much attention. She would chase me around the dining table with a butcher knife and threaten that she was going to kill me. And I didn't know if she was serious or joking. I just ran like hell. Anna came to live with us, and Anna smiled at me. And when Anna was doing the laundry and I was free, she said, "Here, come be with me in the laundry while I do fold the clothes." And I could tell that she cared about me. And on Sundays when she went home, if everybody else was out, she would take me to be with her Polish family. and they would treat me like I was the prince coming to visit them. They would make a nice meal for me. Her father would give me some schnapps at the dinner table, and at 5 and 6 years old, I was drinking liquor and feeling very grown up. So I had many, many really nice experiences. Oh, my teachers in school loved me too, because I was very bright and I knew the answers to everything. So I was getting affection from other grown-ups, if not from my own parents.
It makes a lot of sense. You had some people who really cared about you, and that's important to have at least one.
Yeah, and since my father died, I always had a surrogate father. I remember it was my physics teacher in high school. I loved him. I would hang out with him after school. I would ask him what he thought I should be reading or studying, and he was into ham radio. So he taught me how to build a crystal set, put it in my backyard, and listen to AM radio on my
Uh,
crystal set. So I was having a wonderful experience with what felt like a loving father to me. Now,
that's great.
fast forward, I was about to graduate from Los Angeles High School, and I knew I was going to go off and do something, but I didn't know what I was going to major in. And I had two different ideas. My writing teachers praised me. I liked doing creative writing, and I did it very well. And my sister had thought maybe she was going to be a novelist, but she gave that up. And I thought maybe I'm the one who should become the novelist. That seemed very tempting to me. And the second thing was for my physics teacher. It was the time of the explosion of the atomic bomb, and physics was very, very hot in the public consciousness, and a very, very noble and powerful calling. And I was getting good grades in physics too. I thought physics is very interesting. Maybe I should major in physics.
Wow, that's impressive that you had a good mind for physics because that was the one class that didn't come naturally to me at all.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Then my sister, who I love hated, intervened. She had just graduated from college when I was graduating from high school. She said to me, "Why don't you get some vocational counseling?"
Hmm.
I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, you go and you get evaluated by somebody who knows a lot about various career, and there are tests you can take to see what you'd be good at and what you're interested in. And this is just the right time to do it. The VA that's only a couple miles from here, the one on Wilshire Boulevard and Brentwood, that VA." As all the others in the country were slowing down. World War II had ended. This nation was very kind to its veterans from World War II. All kinds of services have been put into place to help them regain their place in in society that they had to rejoin. There was family counseling available to them. There was vocational counseling available to them. There was, of course, medical treatment for whatever physical wounds they were carrying. And there was a large psychiatric cadre in each of the hospitals to try and deal with the emotional hurts of the people coming back. But it was tailing down now. Most people who needed it had already been processed in one way or another. The big rush of people being discharged at the end of World War II was over, and so the VA was going to start cutting back. And again, very kind, in order to not dump a whole lot of employees into the marketplace suddenly, they would be phased out slowly. And the way to do that was for the first 3 years of this decision, the VAs would be open to the citizenry. So
Oh,
any citizen could come to the VA and get hospital care or medical care or anything and pay a small fee for it to the VA. And so we had a public health system in place
I hear.
starting in 1945 that lasted until 1948.
Where did you go to high school in Los Angeles?
Los Angeles High School. It was the cradle of the intelligentsia. Most of the politicians in the state and the mayors of the city had gone to Los Angeles High School.
Oh, so you moved from Pittsburgh after your father passed, I'm guessing?
Yes, my weather
losing.
all the time and be in the sunshine.
You moved here when you were a teenager?
I came here when I was 14.
Oh, okay. And then you went back to the Midwest for University of Michigan grad school.
Yes.
And did you go to college in California? Or where'd you go to
I
college?
went to UCLA.
Okay, I've heard of it.
So I went to get vocational counseling. It cost my mother $300 and she was happy to pay for it. And I had 24 hours of work with my counselor and turned out to be James Bugenthal was my counselor. I had no idea that he was headed for an illustrious career in our profession and became one of the very valued founders of the existential humanistic movement in psychology. At that point, he was a young psychologist who had just gotten his degree under Carl Rogers from Ohio State University and had been hired in the VA and had come to Southern California just like I did. And
Yeah.
he talked to me. He interviewed me for 2 hours about what I like doing in my leisure time. He gave me the Miller's Analogy test and a whole bunch of other tests, including tweezer dexterity. You have to pick tweezers up out of a Petri dish and drop them into a little round glass as fast as you can and see how many of them you can empty out of the damn sucker. There were things, would you rather be a plumber or an electrician? Many questions like that. And after he'd spent all that time with me, he said, "You are very bright. You could probably succeed at anything you decided to do. There's no reason intellectually why you can't reach some goal that you might set for yourself." And I would urge this. You are good. I took some samples of your writing. You write very, very well. There were some science problems that were given to you. You aced them. And he said, "Why don't you try this? Why don't you start with a double major and go down each of the paths together? You might have to come back for summer session so you could take enough classes that you needed to take in a year. But could you afford? Do you have enough money at home that you could spend time on the campus during summers too and pay summer tuition?" Yeah, I said, "Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem." And he said, "But here's something else I'd like you to think of." I said, "What's that?" "Would you consider being a psychologist?" I said, "A psychologist? No, I've never considered that. What the hell would I do if I were a psychologist?" And he said, "Well, it would intertwine two things you're good at. It is partly a science. Many psychologists do very interesting scientific research. And certainly it's the opportunity to write a lot, to write about the human condition, to write about work with clients, to write all kinds of things. And your writing skills could be used. I can't think of another profession that would take those two halves of you and meld them into something that might be useful." He said, "Here's what to do. You have to take certain electives. Why don't you take introductory psychology the first semester too and see what that does with your other courses?" And I said, "Okay, that sounds like sense." And I signed in. Now, I had older students I had known from LA High who were at UCLA. I was able to pick their brains about who it is I should sign up with classes for. I got some suggestions of physics teachers. I got some suggestions of writing teachers, and I filled out my first year's program, my September program for that year. But I was smart. There was one introductory psychology class at 8 o'clock in the morning, and that made me very happy because I had cased the joint a few times, and the student parking was very inadequate. If you didn't get there early in the morning, you weren't going to get a space. You would be wandering around back and forth looking for where to park or parking in downtown Westwood somewhere. So I was
Sounds
happy. I was finding a 8 o'clock psychology class, but the teacher said TBA, the dreadful to be arranged. So clearly, the slot had not been filled when this was written and printed. I asked any of my students, do they know who's teaching? No. So I said, I don't care. I don't care who's teaching it. It's going to be 8 o'clock in the morning. And I walked in, I got a good parking space, and I walked into class and sat down. And 3 minutes later, it was one of these amphitheaters with maybe 200 students in it. Down one of the aisles walks James F.T. Bugental. He had now joined the faculty at UCLA, and he
He
was
became a very famous psychologist in our field. Yeah, he
what?
did. He became a very famous psychologist in our field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was going to be my psychology teacher. And I was always very shy. I tried to hide so he wouldn't see me. I was afraid that he wouldn't recognize me or he'd be annoyed that I was in his class. But as he saw me, he smiled and waved to me, and that felt better. And I loved listening to him. He was a wonderful teacher. And I loved the things I was being exposed to. So after my first year, I didn't like my physics major nearly enough. Some of it was boring. The calculus I had to study was very boring to me. And I did writing samples and I did well at them, but I had fallen in love with psychology and the die was cast. Never looked back after that.
Wow. And then you got your PhD in psychology at University of Michigan.
Yes.
Yeah, where I went to undergrad there.
Yeah. Bugenthal was even coaching me as I went along. When I asked him as I finished my first year in school, I had taken two classes with him. One was about the psychology of adjustment. That was the second class. I took that class.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to be in the upper division now. I have a few classes I have to take to fulfill the major, but it doesn't use up all my schedule. What should I take? And he said, well, if you really want to know something about people, you're not going to learn it in your psychology class. He said, you need to take a class in Russian literature, a class in mythology. What else did he want? Oh, you should take some anthropology classes and you should take some sociology classes too. And you might then begin to have an appreciation of what human life is all about on this planet. You won't find
Right.
that in your psychology classes.
That was good advice, wasn't it?
What?
That was great advice, wasn't it? To
It
broaden your
still is.
list. Well, unfortunately, I'm really enjoying this, Arthur, but I have to get going. But maybe at some point we can do part three. But I have a 3 o'clock appointment I have to get ready for, and
So please do and have a nice day, and I'll get ready for the person I'm going to see at 3.
all right, take care. Nice having you.
Nice talking to you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye bye.